In the Journal of the 501st, a veteran of the 501st Legion remarked that while the 501st had gotten the best of the war, it had also gotten the worst. However, that wasn't entirely true. The reserve units that got to kick back in the core worlds probably had it better, we'd say, and there were certainly units who saw worse than the 501st ever did. In particular, the 327th Star Corps had a much harsher list of assignments, facing long odds and hellish conditions from Geonosis to Felucia. No other unit could claim to have suffered worse than the 327th. But why was that? Why did the 327th keep getting stuck with all the nasty missions? In this video, we'll answer that question.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
The 327th Star Corps was a detachment of the 2nd Sector Army, one of the 6 sector armies based in the core worlds. Since its own territory was pretty much insulated from Separatist attack, at least in the early months of the war, many of the 2nd Sector Army's component units were deployed to reinforce the beleaguered sector armies fighting in the Outer Rim. The 327th was one such unit, frequently dispatched to hot zones to stem the bleeding. Following the Battle of Hypori, the 327th came under the command of Jedi General Aayla Secura, one of the Order's most skilled fighters. Clone Marshal Commander CC-5052, nicknamed Bly, became her clone liaison. The two became a great team. Bly's unwavering focus on the mission contrasted well with Secura's unorthodox tactics and ingenuity, allowing the 327th to overcome virtually any situation. Typically, Bly would trust Secura to come up with an overarching plan, and Secura would trust Bly to figure out the best way to get it done. The generals command, as Bly said, and the clones implement. By the end of the war, the clones of the 327th were among the most skilled in the Grand Army of the Republic. The unit's veterans were well known for their expertise at fighting in hostile environments, and many of the 327th's elite cadre had ARC Trooper training. It's unknown whether these clones were full ARC Troopers, whether they had been through Alpha 17's Commander Training Program, or whether they had just received snippets of training from Bly or another of Alpha's students, but they were highly skilled and used ARC Trooper equipment such as Kamas and Command Pauldrons. Most of the clones within the 327th Star Corps wore armor with yellow stripes, a trend that appears to have been started by Commander Bly, who kept his yellow commander's stripes after the transition between Phase 1 and Phase 2 armor. To us, yellow and white doesn't seem like it would be the best color scheme for action in hostile environments, but it appears to have worked well enough for the 327th. The 327th had an extremely long combat history, starting right at the beginning of the Clone Wars. It was one of the 5 full corps that fought in Geonosis, where it suffered heavy casualties. The 327th component unit, Hawkbat Battalion, was almost completely wiped out in a clash with a column of homing spider droids. Despite the many casualties sustained at Geonosis, however, the battle ended in a Republic victory, and the 327th Star Corps limped off to the next battlefield. For the 327th, this first fight set the tone for the next 3 years of the war. Early in the war, the 327th was assigned to General Aayla Secura, who led the unit on a series of campaigns across the Outer Rim. Many of these early missions were ill-fated, most notably the Sky Battle of Quell. During the battle, Separatist warships ambushed and destroyed General Secura's fleet in the atmosphere of the planet Quell. The men of the 327th could do little as their Star Destroyers fell apart around them and super battle droids boarded to mop up the survivors. Most of the unit escaped the disastrous defeat at Quell thanks to Anakin Skywalker and Ahsoka Tano, but the unit was scattered in the aftermath. Secura, Bly, and a few others were stranded on Maridun, where they had to fight another battle just to regroup with the rest of the Corps. Fortunately for them, the Battle of Maridun went better than Quell had, though again, the 327th suffered some serious casualties. 21 BBY brought the 327th to Alzok 3, Florum, and New Holstis. In the latter battle, the 327th was absolutely massacred by the Separatist-aligned Mandalorian protectors. The Republic ultimately won the battle, but by its end, the 327th had been cut down to 60% strength, which was pretty nuts for a unit of 36,000 men. Despite the losses, the 327th kept fighting. They had no other choice. They battled the armies of Asajj Ventress in the haunted swamps of Dramun Khas, facing hostile conditions and opposition by darkside prophets as they went. In 20 BBY, the 327th suffered heavy casualties yet again in the Battle of Honoghr, in which the Corps had to hack through thick jungles and face swift death at the hands of Noghri warriors to retrieve a key piece of equipment. During the Outer Rim sieges, the 327th Star Corps played a crucial role in two of the most grueling battles of the war. In the Siege of Seleucami, the 327th and two other elite corps fought in a constant back and forth war against the Morgukai Shadow Army, a separatist clone army trained by Anzati Master assassins to kill Jedi. Casualties on Seleucami were staggering, but the 327th kept fighting for 5 long months, unwilling to let the Shadow Army escape and participate in other theaters of the war. The Republic eventually won the battle, but the 327th was redeployed to another siege just a few days after. As you all know well, the final battle of the Clone Wars was, for the 327th, the Battle of Felucia. On Felucia, the 327th Star Corps was called in to do what many other units had failed to, capture the main stronghold of the Commerce Guild. In the jungles of Felucia, the 327th faced vicious Acklays, flesh-eating disease, and an enemy far more familiar with the terrain than the clones were. Nonetheless, they pushed on and gained the upper hand in the battle, albeit at a high cost. By the time Order 66 came and the Clone Wars ended, Bly and his men were well on their way to capturing Felucia for good. Those were some pretty nasty battles. The 327th emerged victorious from some, and some they conceded to the Seps. But what's interesting is less the individual battles and more the connections between them. Who in Republic High Command hated the 327th so much that they sent the boys in yellow to Dramun Khas, Honoghr, Seleucami, and Felucia? If they'd been on Jabeam and on Bara as well, then the 327th would have seen every single one of the Republic's worst battles. That's not very fair, but there's a reason the 327th kept getting the garbage assignments. They could handle them. Again and again, the 327th got absolutely mauled, but they survived every time. Those members of the Corps who survived gained plenty of experience across a wide range of environments, thus making the 327th a natural choice for other hostile environments. When you had a unit that had survived the desert flats of Geonosis, the swamps of Dramun Khas, the jungles of Honoghr, and the calderas of Seleucami, wouldn't they be the natural pick to send to the fungus forests of Felucia? The reason the 327th racked up so much experience so quickly was that they were simply some of the first to get any. As we mentioned earlier, they were one of just 5 corps to fight on Geonosis. In the early months of the war, the Republic had to deal with 1,000 battlefronts opening up at the same time, and they only had a few units experienced enough to handle the worst fronts. Thus, the 327th was dispatched to the hot zones where they suffered more and endured more casualties than other units. As the war went on and the Republic deployed millions of new clones, Republic strategists reserved the worst battlefields for the toughest and most experienced units. And thus, the 327th got sent into hell again and again. They were first to fight and they kept on surviving, so they were given the very worst of the Clone Wars. That sounds like a pretty raw deal if you ask us, but then again, being a slave soldier grown in a vat to die far from everything you've ever known is already a raw deal, so what do we know? Anyway, what do you think? Do you think the 327th was better than the 501st? Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments section below. And as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.